Okay, welcome all you citizens of the world. It's time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. We're here in Chicago where we do stand up and we try to be strong. Thank you, Kev Mo. I'm Michael James. I'm your host today, and I'm here with you and for you with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This is number 105 during the time of the pandemic. Basically, that means that we're still doing it from home. It's not quite live. We are recording on June 10th, the day before this will be aired. And you can get it now 3 times a week on WLUW. That's Saturday morning, that's Tuesday morning, and Friday morning. And we're available a lot of other places too. Today, I've got a number of really neat guests. I'm going to have the longtime political activist, politician, Clem Balanoff. He is the National Political Director of the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union, and he's working on elections all over the country. We're going to have our semi-regular sports report, the Heartland Sports Report from the former famed cross-country coach, Gordon Thompson, who is now teaching and looking forward to a summer off. And then we're going to welcome our co-host sometimes, Katie Hogan, along with Rosanna Magada, and they're going to talk about the Artists on the Wall, that signature event that happens every year in the 49th Ward along the shores of the Great Lake, Michigan in Loyola Park. So we're going to have some good conversation. I'm going to start off by letting you know that on Thursday was the beginning of the January 6th Capitol insurrection hearings. I think we may get to talk about that with Clem Balanoff a little bit. In any event, the Democrats and a couple of Republicans who were involved, and Liz Cheney was very good, I thought. They're basically showing and illustrating, demonstrating that Donald Trump was right at the center of the actions that took place on January 6th. And you know, it was spellbinding, and there was a lot of new footage, and we'll certainly hear more about that in the weeks to come because there's a lot more to come. On the gun front, let me let you all know that in the 9.5 years since 20 first graders and 6 teachers were massacred at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut, there have been over 900 incidents of gunfire on school grounds and nearly 3,500 mass shootings. That's a lot of mass shootings. And a little bit more on that, there is going to be on Saturday the 11th, that's when some of you will be listening or seeing this on a stream or hearing it on a stream. There's going to be demonstrations across the country called March for Our Lives. And the one here in Chicago is March for Our Lives Chicago. It starts at noon on Saturday the 11th, and it'll be at the Federal Plaza, and it's going to go on for a while. On the political front, the San Francisco District Attorney race, it was a setback for the progressives who support the mission of criminal justice reform. Chesa Boudin lost. The turnout was overwhelmingly financed by more conservative forces in San Francisco, and there are a lot of tech companies, and the constituency and the population there seems to have changed a lot, but it was a very small turnout, about 129,000 people out of maybe 400,000+ eligible voters. So I don't think we've seen the end of it, but that basically is talking points for people who want to tone down the progressive arguments on a lot of fronts. On the labor front, we've been reporting regularly about the increase of Starbucks outlets that are unionized. That continues to happen. I think there were 4 or 5 more this week. And in addition to Starbucks and Amazon, and then we did report on a Gentleman Men's Club last week, all unionizing. Now Trader Joe's workers are seizing the moment to unionize. Employees at a store in Western Massachusetts filed for a vote to unionize on Thursday, that would be yesterday, citing health and safety conditions as well as cuts to benefits as the catalyst for their push for organization. If they succeed, they'll be the only Trader Joe's unionized store in the country, but we know many more will follow. Stay tuned. On the war in Ukraine, it still goes on. The Russians seem to be digging in the eastern sector. President Zelensky said that the Ukraine needs more weapons and European Union membership. So stay tuned for that. I've got a little bit of good news on the environmental front that was given to me by our producer, engineer, Emilio Davis. And it says, many people who want to invest in solar panels for their home don't know where to start. Well, starting in the fall, furniture store IKEA announced they will be selling home solar units in California stores in partnership with SunPower, a 35-year-old solar brand which is well respected in the industry. IKEA also announced plans to move the solar panel stocking into stores nationally in the near future. I think Illinois has some kind of a special arrangement. There's a lot of efforts to get people to go solar. I, for one, am a homeowner with a lot of trees, but I'm looking into it myself because solar is a good thing. And a little bit of an enticement on the sports front. Jefferson Park native, that's Jefferson Park here in Chicago, and Taft High School alum Jack Sawinski is the left fielder for the Pittsburgh Pirates and now leads the National League rookies in home runs this season with 7. While we tend to root for Chicago teams, we certainly like that a Chicago native, Jack Zawinski, is doing real well in his rookie year. And a little bit of information about what's going on here in the 49th Ward. Again, you may see or listen to this show a number of places, but if you're getting it on the radio on Saturday morning or via stream on Saturday morning, know that on Saturday afternoon at 7600 Paulina, there will be a 49th Ward Juneteenth block party. Also, the farmers market is back open on Sundays, and this will be its second week. Glenwood Avenue is closed off not just for the farmers market, but also for bars and restaurants along there. They're now really a great table setup out there, and people should check it out. Also, 2 other things, the Prairie Dancer Front Porch Studio Gallery, that would be me, will be out there on Sunday with photos and books, and I'm ready to have some good conversation with any and all who show up. And one more thing would be Heirloom Books over on Ashland Avenue here in the 49th, or close to the 49th. I'm not sure, it could be the 48th. But Heirloom Books is having their 5th birthday party. Will take place Sunday from 2 to 6 at the wonderful Archie's Cafe on Loyola Avenue, just west of Sheridan Road. Okay, that's it for the announcements. Emilio, I think, is going to pick a song. We'll be right back with our first guest, so stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or wherever you're getting the show, and we'll be back with more Live from the Heartland. And I am really glad to bring on a guy I've been chasing for weeks, trying to get him on, because he is a very busy guy. That would be the one, the only Clem Balinoff, and he is the political director of the Amalgamated Transit Union, a labor organization in the US and Canada, who then represents employees in the public transit industry. And Clem has been around for a long time. He was a state representative here in Illinois. He's from a politically active family. Maybe get him to talk a little bit about that, but let's just get going with Clem. Good morning to you, brother.
Hey, good morning, Michael. It's great to be here. You know, and it's, you say when you talk, you say I've been around a long time. You make me feel like I'm old.
Well, you're not as old as me, brother. I'll tell you that. You're looking good.
A couple of years younger than you, but certainly always trying to catch up to you in terms of activism and involvement.
Well, you're doing a great job. And every time I've tried to get a hold of you, you'd be on your way to Canada or California. So why don't you let's just start off with telling us a little bit about what you've been doing on the political front. I know you're going to want to focus on some races you're working on. I'm going to maybe grill you on the January 6th hearings. Let's start with that. You got any take on the January 6th hearings? On Thursday night, we watched, I think a lot of people, maybe some Republicans too, watched them. Your take on them?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the kind of the footage and the of what we saw yesterday was horrific, and it's unbelievable to me that nobody, Republicans included, after watching all of the statements, including what Bill Barr said,
That was heavy.
that really was, could any way support Donald Trump and this at this particular point in history, and Republicans, quite honestly, because the vast majority of them are supposed to continue to be supportive, and they fall over themselves to try to prove that they're even more close to Trump, and they believe that he was cheated in 2020. It's just unbelievable to me. They try to figure out how to get the most craziest that they can to get elected in the Republican primaries, which is going to be
and they reverse their position about, some of them have talked about, well, this can't happen and we have to look into it, and we got to get rid of Trump when he was still in, and then they switch in their stories.
Yeah, well, I think that's because at the time of that, within the Republican Party, Donald Trump was a real serious force and extremely popular. I think that's changing in this country, though. And when you look at elections around the country, a number of his candidates are losing in the Republican primaries. I mean, he has victories too, don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to start to see, I think when there's just some kind of like crack in the armor there, I think we're going to see, or crack in the dam, I think we're going to see the floodgates open up. And I think you're going to see a lot more of his candidates not doing very well. And it's interesting because I'm not sure that's the best thing for Democrats in the fall. I mean, you'd rather be running against a real Trump Republican.
On the Republican front, do you think that, you have an awful lot of people who just totally flipped into another kind of a world. Yeah. Do you think there were many Republican listeners last night? I know Fox News didn't even broadcast them.
Well, I don't think that every Republican only listens to Fox News. I'm sure there were a number of Republicans listening. I guarantee you every member of Congress was listening last night of the Republicans. But no, I think there were probably lots of Republicans and a lot of independents kind of, people like listening last night. And, that's interestingly, there are fewer and fewer swing voters in every election now, when it becomes a Democrat and Republican. So those are the people you have to be talking to. And I think that the message came across loud and clear yesterday. So, that if the Democrats can keep, somehow get the narrative to be that, then I think that we do very well in the fall. Unfortunately, I think they're going to vote, people vote their pocketbooks, inflation, gas prices, and things like that. And that's where we have to kind of really work.
Well, let's look at that a little bit. When I was talking to you before we came on the air, the other day, there was a guy on CNN talking, and he basically said, if the election is about saving our democracy, the Democrats have a real good shot at it. If it's about gas prices and inflation, the Republicans win. When I talk to you, you're pretty skeptical about the Democrats' chances in 2022. So why don't you elaborate on that, Clem?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons there, Michael. In 1992, there was a big post. There was Post-its on the wall in Bill Clinton's campaign offices all over the place. It said, "It's the economy, stupid. People vote their pocketbooks." I mean, that's just it's what, and they always blame the party in power. It doesn't matter if it's their doing or not. But when I look at the fall, I think the reason that I'm not as optimistic at this point in time, but I still think there's a lot of time to Election Day. I point that out because things can change very rapidly because of the way the electronic media that we have now. But I think that, when they do polling, is the country going in the right direction or wrong direction? Overwhelmingly, people feel it's going in the wrong direction. The party in power, generally loses seats in the off-year elections. Joe Biden's approval rating right now is an average of a -12. I think that with voting rights restrictions in many states that have passed, it'll make it more difficult for Democrats. I was in Georgia last year for the Ossoff and Warnock race. I was there for a couple of months. And if there had been restrictions at that time, I'm not sure we might not have won, because we have always been working, like when I worked with David Orr, to be able to figure out how to make it easier to vote and enfranchise people, not disenfranchise them like Republicans are trying to do. Crime in big cities could become an issue. The price of gasoline. There's not a time that you turn on the news now that they don't talk about the price of gasoline. In California, there was a story that it was almost $10 a gallon.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago in Berwyn, I paid $5.79 a gallon. And when I was in Canada last week, I filled up the tank. Now it's Canadian dollars, but I filled up a tank of this. My rental car was a Volkswagen Passat. I don't think that's a very big car. And I filled up the tank, and it was $125. I mean, and I'm not alone. I was in Berkeley 2 weeks before that, and this was in gas, was only $6 a gallon. And a woman and her husband were filling up their truck, and they were senior citizens. And I was talking to her, and she said, yeah, it's really hard living on a fixed income. She says, I'm fortunate. We're fortunate. She says, we only fill up the truck once a month because now that we're retired, we don't go anywhere. She said, but I really feel sorry for younger people who have to get to work every day, and I don't know how they're going to do it. But, the economy, inflation, as I said, people vote their pocketbooks. Redistricting in this country, the Republicans did really well. In Illinois, the Democrats controlled the process, the House, the Senate, and the governor. And so we got to do the redistricting. So it's more favorable to Democrats. Like this fall, I look like right now it's 13 Democrats and 5 Republicans in the Illinois congressional delegation. It's very possible after this fall that it'll be 15 and 2 because we lost a seat. And because of some redistricting things, we can win 15 seats in Illinois, assuming, like if we're fortunate. I'm not saying we will, but that would be, that's pretty optimistic. And then I think there's frustration among like young people. They look at things like the Green New Deal. It's not going anywhere in the Congress. They look at things like, free college tuition, and they're living under mountains of debt. And they look at it and say, hey, it doesn't seem like things are moving. And I think so there'll be some frustration, and in Illinois, then we've got the Madigan scandal as still is hovering over, every Democrat in just about every race and incumbents. So I think it's going to be tough.
What do you think that activists, people of conscience should be doing in the months leading up to the election? I mean, if you had to get everyone on the same pathway to salvaging some of this, what do you suggest?
Well, I think around the country, I think we have to start changing the narrative. We can't be talking about all the things that we our frustrations with what hasn't happened. I think we have to talk about some of the things that have happened. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was the real first big piece of legislation that we passed will create just hundreds of thousands of jobs, maybe millions of jobs across this country. It'll make public transit better. It'll take care of the water supply, be able to give us money to be able to get rid of lead in the water in Chicago and other cities across this country because of, the lead pipes. We have to talk about things like that. We have to talk about saying, look, yes, we understand we haven't gotten, in certain cases, we haven't gotten where we want to get. But when we look at things like the Green New Deal, or we look at college tuition or Medicare for all, and I'm not saying we're going to get there in 2024 or by 2024 if we elect a few more Democrats, because that's not going to happen. But if you don't start somewhere, unfortunately, I mean, I'm old enough now to understand that change has historically been incremental. I'd like to go from point A to point Z like you would, Michael, in so many cases.
Yeah, as we get older, we get more over time.
Yeah, well, we understand, unfortunately, that that's just not how things happen all of the time. You and Katie have been fighting for, you're my role models, you guys, and David Orr. I mean, seriously, been fighting all your lives for what's right. And, yet you see changes, but unfortunately, they're incremental. And I think that we have to start doing things like that. People have to get actively involved. We see much less and less, many less people now volunteering. It's harder to get people to knock on doors, make phone calls. And I think that was, in part because of the changing in Illinois of the kind of machine, because instead of having volunteers where they could give jobs to, not volunteers, but people were working because of patronage. Now what they do is they buy, they say, hey, well, we'll pay you for the day, just to get you out to do something. Volunteerism, it's very difficult to get people out, to walk precincts and to knock on doors. It's something that we have to get back to.
No, that's why we need local organizations. Like here in the 49th, we've got Network 49, which does some good stuff.
Yes, it does.
We talked about it.
No, Network 49 is a good example. It's an independent progressive organization. And that is the kind of thing that we have to be building. I mean, Bernie Sanders is coming to Illinois next Thursday and Friday. He'll be doing a rally at Teamster City on Ashland there on Thursday night. I think it's 5:30 or 6:30, right in that time frame, right? And he continues to talk about the future and about what a future could be like. And I think it's the Bernie, everybody says, well, the guy's an old man, he's gray haired, he's grouchy, but people follow him. That's right, because he's talking about things that matter to working men and women, to seniors. to younger people. He's talking about pocketbook issues. And that's why I say we've got to be very careful with this fall. I mean, it could be about pocketbook issues. And if it is, I think Democrats have issues.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you to check in with Bernie, because I know you ran his campaign here in Illinois, and see if we can get him as a guest on the show sometime when by a Zoom. Well, we had Beto O'Rourke on recently, 6 monthts ago.
I will tell you, I will try, but I'll tell you what. No promises, because that is honestly, Michael. I won't tell any stories. That's extremely difficult. Look, Katie was a delegate. I was a delegate. David Orr was a delegate. What's his name? You have another one from 49.
Michael Harrington.
Michael Harrington was, yes, that's right. Michael Harrington was a delegate. We had a lot of people from the area that were delegates, and I think even collectively, it's very difficult to get Bernie. I know he's coming in next week also to endorse a couple of candidates for U.S. Congress.
Well, we can do Bernie from anywhere whenever he wants to spend 20 minutes. But you've been traveling around the country. Yeah. You've been working on some races. Let's talk about what do you want to start with? Nationally, what you're working on?
Well, why don't we talk about Illinois?
Yeah, let's go to Illinois, because that's my favorite state.
Yeah, me too. It's the one I live in. And it's the one where we can have the most impact ourselves. There are a number of races for Congress that are coming up on June 28th. And in many cases, they really do pit a progressive against less progressive candidates. And like in the amalgamated transit, we made a number of endorsements. We've endorsed Danny Davis in the 7th congressional district, and he's running against a young woman. And it's interesting because she's trying to say, hey, this is like we're all about change and things like that. Well, when you look at Danny, he's been a leader in the Congress, and somebody said, well, we got to have a change. I said, got to have a change. Okay, so let's figure this out. What is it about Danny Davis? Is it because he isn't for Medicare for all? I said, he's been for Medicare for all since Quentin Young, the father of Medicare for all in Illinois, was alive. And that's right. Is it because he's not for free college tuition? I said, he is. Is it maybe because he doesn't believe in raising the minimum wage to a living wage? And I said, you know what? He was doing that since before she was born. The only thing they say is basically they're saying, well, he's been around a long time. You know what? I say, if it's been good and he's been on the right side, why change? But the ATU, we are big supporters of Danny's. In the 3rd congressional district, it's a new Latina district. I think, again, this pits a serious progressive state legislator, Delia Ramirez, against somebody who has been very close and connected to to Louis Arroyo, who's going to be going to jail soon. They called him what they call him. Something call it. The judge called it something on steroids, like corruption on steroids or something. This is his mentor and his political godfather. I believe he called him that one time. It's and Delia is a young, dynamic Latina supported by Chuy Garcia, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and others. And it's a real opportunity for progressives.
Clem, you talked about the famous Levin family, and you're from the famous Balinoff family. And during your entire lifetime, you've been part of that family. What's it like growing up in a progressive political family? Well,
it's interesting because somebody was asking me that a few days ago. We were talking about different movements that have happened. Actually, it was with Heather Booth, who, by the way, is supporting a candidate for state representative in Illinois named Abdel Nasser Rashid, who's running against the last vestiges of the Madigan machine with Mike Zaleski. At any rate, he's in the paper today. His father, again today, he's one of those guys that got the $5,000 a month no-show jobs at ComEd. His father, a real corrupt family. But it's interesting because in 1937, my dad was at the Memorial Day Massacre at Republic Steel, where 10 people were murdered, by the police while they were trying to organize a steelworkers union. I've been involved, growing up like that, you're involved in everything. In 1963, my dad dragged me to Washington to the March on Washington with Dr. King.
I was there. Maybe we saw each other.
We might have.
I was older than you, though.
Well, I was young, and I'll tell you what, it's kind of like being on the boardwalk. I don't remember a lot about the day other than the fact that I was there. But I would get to, whether it was the anti-war movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement. It's like you grow up in a family where you're involved in it. You're going to marches, you're going to, leaflet or whatever it takes. And it's like, and so it kind of is in your blood. And it's like, I always tell people, one of the big curses in my life is that I got involved in politics. I said, it's so all consuming, everybody, maybe you should think about something else. And I don't really mean that, because I enjoy it. I love it. And it's who I am. It's part of who I am. And, that's a good thing, because, it's like right now, I look at the world, and I think there's three, in government, I think there's three things we have to do. Voting rights is so critical, and making sure that we don't lose, because we're losing our democracy as we restrict more and more people's access to voting. I think it's also important that we have campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
Because if we don't change what it takes to get elected, only the millionaires and billionaires can afford to run. Campaigns are coming much more expensive nowadays. But the most important issue that we face, and one that I tell every young person and middle-aged person and even older people that we have to do something about, and it may not be for them like myself. I'm going to survive the planet. You will probably survive the planet. But the question is, will our children and our grandchildren? And we've got to do something about global warming. And if we don't change what it takes to get elected, we're probably not going to win. And it's so important that we do. And I fight for those things every single day. And I'm going to continue to fight for them, make sure my kids do. And I have a grandson now. He's about 15 months old. The absolute apple of my eye. I go to Berkeley a lot because that's where my daughter's at with our grandson. Coming in a couple of days. They're coming in a week and a half. And it's because I want to fight for a better world and survival for our grandkids.
Well, you're a great example to all of us, Clem Balinoff, and I want to thank you for coming on live from the Heartland, and I'll be chasing you around in a few months to come on again.
And I promise you, Michael, I'll be there. And please say hello to Katie for me, one of my favorites. All right,
brother.
Yep.
All right, you are listening to the Live from the Heartland show for the week of June 11th, 2022. I'm Michael James. We'll be right back with our next guest. It'll be Gordon Thompson, the famed track coach, and he will be giving us a sports report. We're back with more Live from the Heartland, and we're bringing on one of my favorite people in the world and someone who knows an awful lot about sports, particularly track and field, but ventures into all sports when he does the semi-monthly Heartland Sports Report, the one, the only, Gordon Thompson. Good morning to you, Senor Thompson.
Hello, Chicago. How are you
Gordon
doing?
and I haven't seen each other since in April. We were traveling around in the Southern Sphere. I didn't get into too many political discussions, but a few. But we had a good time driving around. And so how are you doing, Gordo?
Doing pretty good. You did get in a few political discussions. Oh, every Starbucks we stopped in, you're like, hey, are you guys getting unionized? Hey, what's going down?
Some of them probably are union by now.
Right. They probably are. Yeah. Some of them were jive to the conversation. Some weren't.
Let's start off with golf. You like to golf once in a while. Your family golfed. I have a son who golfs. I never got into it after caddying one time. I didn't really like the people I caddied for. But golf is, it certainly has captured my attention whenever Tiger Woods is playing. He's not playing too often these days, although we root for his comeback, but there's a lot of big news in golf. How about filling us in and why it's important for progressives to know this?
Well, yeah, I have swung the club a little bit, and it's the game that I love to hate because it's really an exercise in frustration. The score of par is supposed to be average, but you got to be a professional to hit par. Par is not an average score at all. It's a superlative score, and hitting par is no easy. I could hit it on a hole or two, but not for a round. And my Dave's a really good golfer behind me. Golf is getting a big deal lately because, hey, Tiger Woods turned down high dollar figures to join this new LIV league, commonly called the Live League by the golfers. And what's the story is that LIV stands for a number in Roman numerals, and that's 54. And that 54 represents the tournament holes in a round of golf of 3 or 4 days of 18 holes. 54 holes rounds out a tournament. And what this LIV league is they're going to be competing against the PGA, the Professional Golf Association, and that's the traditional standard. And Tiger took said a hard no to joining this league, whereas his contemporary Phil Mickelson took the money and is saying all kinds of crazy stuff in the public, as well as other golfers that are taking the money and run. It's not to jeopardize the PGA. It's just an alternative league. And it's not going to ruin the PGA. Just the PGA says, hey, if you join this league, this LIV league, you can't play in the PGA. So that's fair. But they can play in other major tournaments, like the Open is not a PGA and the Masters is not a PGA tournament. So they can join those others, big deals.
Well, this new golf association is centered in Saudi Arabia.
Well, that's where the funding, that's where the controversy comes.
It would be played where? Here? Everywhere?
Well, the first tournament is in London. It's going on right now in London, and that's the first tournament. And the golfers that have turned it down, like Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods and other really good golfers that want to hold true, they're going to watch this on YouTube, the LIV league, and just to see what the big deal is. And there's no jeopardy in having an alternative league. It just means that you can't play in the PGA if you're going to be in this LIV.
In the news, I have not heard anything about Tiger Woods, to be honest with you, in the mainstream news that I've been watching. I don't follow golf that closely, but I did follow that. One of the criticisms is the new league and the people who are going to it aren't addressing the question of human rights that have been brought up around the funders from Saudi Arabia. And I don't know how much that's in the narrative that you're putting up forth, but in addition to the new league, there are questions about where the money come from and how it's made.
Well, that's a big question because the Saudi Arabia has been, they've been documented as being funding for 9/11, the strike in New York. And then, two, they've been documented of assassinating that American journalist. And so, those are two really bad things. But the money is from Saudi Arabia, who is apparently a friendly favor to America. We know not, just like when we talk about a later story that the Russians really aren't our ally at all. So if the funding was coming from Elon Musk, would it be different? Yeah, it would be different. So this analysis is all about where the funding is from, and it's dirty money. That's all. It's oily money.
Sports reporter, commentary analyst Gordon Thompson. Let's switch to baseball. And one of the things that our beloved White Sox are, they're coming. I hope they'll come out of it a little bit. But Tim Anderson, tell us what happened with Tim Anderson and the guy from the Yankees, I think.
Well, there is a big feud between came to a head a couple of weeks ago between Tim Anderson of the Sox and Josh Donaldson of the New York Yankees. You tell me, Michael, when Tim Anderson called himself the new Jackie Robinson about 5 years ago, what did you think?
I don't think I really reflected on it. I just like Anderson. He's, Jackie Robinson's my favorite player. I grew up loving him. He had the same number that my year of my birth, 42. But I wasn't quite sure. I mean, because what the Yankee player did was call him Jackie, which people take as a put down. I didn't know it could have been of a compliment, but your take on it.
Well, first off,
he apologized later, so there's some doing here.
The apology was a cryptic apology, and kind of some capital letters and some little letters, and it was really not an apology. Hey, Jackie Robinson was a phenomenal trendsetter. I mean, he opened the game up when for African Americans when they had the Negro League already in place. Jackie Robinson was treated awfully by his own teammates, the fans, and he had to endure a lot. And Branch Rickey, the commissioner of baseball, chose Jackie Robinson specifically.
No, he wasn't the commissioner. He was the owner of the Dodgers.
Right. Well, he chose him because of his temperament, right? That Jackie was strong and tough enough to handle it. Well, he did handle a lot, but he didn't have to handle all he did. And he really should have spoken up about all the terrible treatment he was getting at the time. But he didn't. He was really a dignified guy. Tim Anderson, calling himself the new Jackie Robinson, says, I'm going to break ground. I'm going to do something for my race that hasn't been done before. So immediately he brought attention upon himself that he really didn't deserve, positive attention that he really didn't deserve. Well, Josh Donaldson had called him during competition, during the game, called him, hey, Jackie, what's up, Jackie? Just kind of giving him trash talk. Well, that trash talk transcended just regular sports barbs to racial behavior. Calling him Jackie was a racial epithet and really was the same thing as calling him the N-word, and really was a horrible transgression. And his apology was like, hey, screw you, I'm not apologizing. So Josh Donaldson, I don't know if you know, he's got a history. He's been with a bunch of clubs, but only for a couple years at a time. He wears out his welcome for every club he goes to. The guy is not a good teammate for anybody. He's with the Yankees now. They'll get rid of him in a year or so. They're gonna get tired of his crap and extra.
Let's remember that the Boston Red Sox were the last team to take an African-American player. And who was second to last? The Yankees in New York. Anyhow, I never liked the Yankees much, although I respect their players. Let's move on to women's basketball and the case of Ms. Grenier, who is still locked up over there in the old Soviet Union, now called Russia.
Yeah, Brittany Griner, probably the face of the women's NBA, one of the more spectacular players in the history of women's professional basketball. She's incarcerated in Moscow, Russia, and the crime that she was paying is really just a crime of greed. She went to Russia to play in the sports league, the women's sports league, to make much more dollars than she could in the women's NBA. But what she had with her in her luggage was a couple of vape pens that had some cannabis oil in it. And they targeted her. They knew that she was carrying going into Moscow, and they really targeted her and really are now using her as an East versus West political prisoner. She's in bad shape. Hey, Russia has got an incredibly, not just neo-Nazi, but a racist background in how they view people. The average Russian on the street really doesn't think all that much, but there's a hardcore thug of neo-Nazism going on in Moscow and in Russia. And it's really kind of crazy how Putin would say, that's why we're going to invade Ukraine, because we're going to save the country from the neo-Nazis. There's more neo-Nazis in Moscow than there is in the whole country of Ukraine. How do I know this? Well, I was on a USA team that competed in Moscow for the World Indoor Championships. And prior to competition, a CIA chief came in to speak with our team prior to competition. And he warned us. He said, hey, don't walk the streets at night. There's an element that, as if you're a person of color, you're not going to be safe. And that raised the eyebrows and raised the rankles of a bunch of us coaches who were, around during the 1960s. And some of the African-American coaches on the team were part of the civil rights struggle, John Carlos included. And so that raised the rankles. Hey, we took care of that in the 60s. We can take care of this now. And the CIA guy said, nope. These guys have everything that you don't. They have Uzi machine guns. They have all this Molotov cocktails left and right. They're not afraid to use them. So it's a different world, and it's a different concept of what freedom and fairness is in Moscow. And Brittany Griner, is going to be incarcerated for a while, and she may. I'm feared for her life because she may actually die in prison. The situation there is really primitive when you're incarcerated in Moscow. I've never been incarcerated, but I know how the system works there. She's in bad shape, and I really feel bad.
Well, we'll keep people posted. We've been talking about it pretty regularly. I know she was playing for a team owned by one of the wealthiest people who was probably a Putin supporter.
Absolutely. You know it.
We'll see. I mean, so far she's still locked up, and they keep putting her hearings off. You'll be back in about a month, I assume, with some more news. So stay tuned, everybody, for the Heartland Sports Report with Gordon Thompson. Once in a while, we get my cousin Adam James in there, but Gordo is our main man on this front. And stay tuned here if you're listening or if you're watching it. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Thank you once again, Gordo. Talk to you soon. We're back with more Live from the Heartland. So far, we've talked to Clem Balinoff on politics. We've talked to Gordon Thompson around sports. And now the illustrious co-host sometimes of the show, Katie Hogan, is going to come on talking with our friend, Roseanne Magada, and they are both active in the advisory council at Loyola Park, and Loyola Park Advisory Council is the host of the yearly event Artists on the Wall or Artists of the Wall, a signature event here in the 49th Ward. And Katie is going to take it away with her little interview with Roseanne. We'll be right back after they're done.
Yay, here we are again together on Live from the Heartland, the Zoom version. Rosanna Magada, all these years, I think this audience is familiar that when they see you on the screen or hear you on the radio, you're here to talk about Artists of the Wall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's our 29th year. It has gone by so effortlessly, it seems.
I love the way you say effortlessly. That's so great. Okay, full disclosure, Rosanna and I worked side by side on this festival for many, many years. Then I lit out to do something, maybe a radio show, I don't know, and left her with everybody else. And it is not effortless. It becomes kind of a giant effort on one weekend, and then it's something to behold for ever after. So Artists of the Wall, describe it the way you would to somebody who's never been there, I guess.
It is one of the most amazing hands-on art festival in the city that you ever want to experience. You have 160 people out painting on the 600-foot breaker wall right at the beach's edge, and it is magical. That's all I have to say about it right now. It is absolutely magical, with families all around, people are barbecuing, live music is going, kids are running around with paint on their faces. We've got a great art tent. We've got Synapse dance company playing. It's magical. It's just a magical weekend, Father's Day weekend. And it happens every Father's Day weekend for the last 29 years.
We're gonna have to do something magical for the 30th next year.
It's rolling in my head.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
So the most amazing thing, for example, as we speak, the squares are already sold. There will be a few odds and ends available for walk up, but really those are the funny squares. That's what I'm calling them. Differently sized than the full bench. What people have to understand is this wall that is being painted is actually a cement bench that runs, as Rosanna said, 600 feet, and it faces the water and faces our incredible dunes, Restored Dunes project, and Pratt or Farwell Pier, whichever you call it. And we it's year-long art. It only lasts a year. So it's a gift of non-attachment for artists to paint on the walls. And it's very difficult to paint that surface. You really have to get to know how to do it to get the effect you want. And so we have lots and lots of people come back year after year because they go, I'm going to get it next time. I'm going to get that image, but they also fall in love with the whole process, right?
And that becomes the attachment.
Yeah.
Because once you do it, once you actually experience it, and something that you have created from everything that we put out. And this year's theme is World of Tomorrow.
How very Star Trek of us.
Yes, right. And we had this wonderful artist to give us a graphic image of World of Tomorrow with hands all around the lake. It is really beautiful. And where we are today in our climate, what does our World of Tomorrow look like? So it couldn't be more apropos of the climate that we're in and where we imagine that. And to have that imagination from 160 different artists painted on the wall is the attachment. Because once you do it, you want to come back and you want to do it again and again. And that's the success and magic of this festival, Artists of the Wall Festival.
That's absolutely, couldn't say it better. I mean, it's sort of regardless of the theme, the overriding theme, our Rogers Park artists family that comes together on that wall always seems to have a like-minded approach, which is, and it's probably because of the surroundings while they're painting it. It's always about, love and peace and community. And this is our front yard and let's take care of the earth. And, it's just all this wonderful uplifting thoughts. And even unto, I always regularly, there's a painting of someone meditating that makes you just stop and go, oh, maybe I should be meditating right now.
Moment.
Exactly. So it's not the only thing that goes on. You also have, we have a full stage happening both Saturday and Sunday.
Correct.
And this is Father's Day weekend, which is next weekend. Then there's also the kids art tent.
Absolutely. The kids art tent is being put on by this wonderful group called Third Estate Art. Okay. They have been helping us with the kids tents. They've been a part of the Artists of the Wall for the last 4 years. And they just do an amazing job creating art with the little ones. And they handcraft a lot of their arts. And it's a tiny little piece of extra love that they give. It seems tiny, but it's really large for the tiny ones.
You don't still do the practice wall, do you?
We haven't done it in a couple of years. We brought it up to do this year. You never know. We just might get one to do it because that's always really great right behind the paint tent. We have the little kids that just paint over and we just come back and wipe it over and they just paint again. And it's just
A complete mess is what it is.
It is.
Complete
Put
mess.
your Wellingtons on because it's really
But I remember exactly when we started doing it. And it was because kids would come by without parents or anyone else with $30 to buy a square. And they'd be, I want to paint, I want to paint, I want to paint. And so we just thought, why not just create some plywood, thing that people can paint on? And oh my God, did they ever.
It was fantastic.
And we'd have to whitewash it a couple each day to start over again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There's a couple other things going on in the park we should mention before we let this go. On that very day, on that weekend, Father's Day weekend, it is also a volunteer day for the wonderful Dune Restoration Project.
It is indeed.
Yeah, which happens from 9:30 to 12:30. So even though the squares are sold right now, you could show up to the park and be doing dune restoration with the ineffable Ann Whalen, who's been on this show many times, talking about the dunes there. And by the time you get finished, you can walk along the wall and see just dozens and dozens of people setting up and getting really into their painting. It's the coolest thing. And then of course, cool. Yeah. And then of course, Sunday afternoon is the judging, right?
Absolutely. The wall, you need to have your wall done by noon, and then the judging starts. I do also want to mention that we have the Coast Guard Auxiliary that's going to be out both Saturday and Sunday doing water safety, which is really important. And we're very excited to have them back at the festival, sharing water safety tips with us. And we do have that. They're going to be with us all day. And we have free barber that's going to help.
Right.
We're going to have some barbering going on.
Is there a barber college in the neighborhood?
There is a barber college in the neighborhood called Legacy.
Right.
And they're going to come out and share their skills for free.
And share their skills
for free. And that's going to be really wonderful. I do also want to mention that not only are we, the Loyola Park Advisory Council, help create this amazing festival every year, but we have a whole list of projects that we do throughout the year. So have a look at our website at loyolapark.org, and you can find us on all social media. And we've got some great movies in the festival coming up this summer. So get your blankets ready. The first one's coming up is Princess Bride on July 9th, and then Emma and Coco. We've got a couple other events going on, like the Latin Festival movie and bioluminescence. So just go on our website or Chicago Park website and find us here at Loyola Park and come out and join us. We are an amazing community of just art and love and happiness. That's what I feel.
Couldn't say it better. Thank you so much. This was a little talk about Artists of the Wall Festival, which happens Father's Day weekend. That's June 19th and 20th.
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th. Thank you. Saturday and Sunday. And it's just a magnificent way to welcome summer, is the way we used to say it for years. Way to bring summer to our neighborhood and bring others to our neighborhood. So peace out, my sister.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me once again. I appreciate it.
You brought me back.
Thank you, Katie. And we're doing voters registration.
Oh, right. We're doing voters registration. That's my job, I think, this year. And yes, so let people know that they can register to vote and get some other information about the upcoming primary from us there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, my sister.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Roseanne, and all those people who are missing Katie Hogan on this show. She's going to host a couple of shows coming up at the end of June and the beginning of July. And let me just throw in again little reminders. Next week, we're going to have Fritz Cahey, the Cook County Assessor, elected as a reformer, now being challenged by what's left of the regular wing of the Democratic Party. We're also going to welcome my old pal from growing up, author Mark Scott Smith, who's written 3 novels now about the Pacific War. And we're very sorry to learn that Anne McGravy, our friend from Scotland, who found a home in Rogers Park along with her brother Leo and her sister Jo. Anne is a very accomplished playwright. The 3 of them, either together or separately, frequented the Heartland Cafe very often. And she was just a wonderful woman. And she hung in there a long time, in her mid-90s, I believe. Check out her playwriting, Anne McGravy. That's MC, capital Gravie. Today, we're going to go out with, I think we're going to go out with Blind Boys of Mississippi doing I've Been Treating My Neighbor Right. We'd like to get a gospel-esque tune in here because Bob Maravich and Gospel Memories follows this show when it's on air and streamed. If we don't have that, we're going to go out with our beloved Twin Peaks doing Our World. And let me just let you know that we've been putting this show together for over 25 years. We're broadcast on Saturdays, again on Tuesdays, and on Fridays. And you can get us at youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos. And you can also get us on Can TV and Spotify and Google Podcasts. I want to thank the people who really make this thing possible. And that would be Emilio Davis, Lynn Orman Weiss, Imani Warren over at Loyola, Luis Mejia, who's down there in Veracruz, and Katie Hogan and Tom Clark, who sometimes come on the show as hosts or as guests. I'm Michael James. I'm looking forward to a good week. I'll be back next week with a couple of wonderful guests who I already mentioned. So do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, all the good that I do. Together, we can make the world a better place. Have a wonderful week. Over and out.